welcome to the Ghosts of Harrenhal. My name's Simon.
And I'm Mackelly.
Thank you for joining us for episode 127 of our chapter-by-chapter book review of A Song of Ice and Fire by George Martin. Today, we'll be discussing chapter 53 of A Clash of Kings, that's Jon 7.
And we're going to chat about the chapter, we're going to try not to spoil any future plot points for you, and hopefully we'll provide you some entertainment along the way.
We'll summarise what happened, discuss our thoughts on it, provide some useful background, compare it to the TV show, indulge in a little pedantry, and cover some relevant news. Be sure to check out the show notes, they'll provide you some additional information about the characters and other things of note in this chapter. How are you, Mackelly?
I'm doing well. I'm wearing my Stacy's homemade, or at least made on the internet, Ghosts of Harrenhal t-shirt.
It looks good.
Thank you. I feel like I'm forgetting something, but I think I've got everything up here. I keep checking to make sure I remember to hit record, but I hit record. It seems to be working, so I think we're good. How are you doing?
Key element.
It is. Otherwise, we're just talking for an hour.
I've rigged up my mic slightly differently, and the way I've rigged it up, I can't see the light that shows that the mic is on, which is very reassuring when I can see it.
Right.
But I can't see it now, so I'm like, I keep squinting around to make sure it hasn't got switched off somehow.
Well, I can still hear you, so I guess it's working.
Well, yeah, but you hear me through a different mic.
Oh, that's right. You use two mics.
Yeah, there's two mics going on over here.
Right.
So my brother finally,
so
we were on episode 127, finally had his riposte to our 100th episode. And it was, my brother's weird. He's funny, but he is weird.
I agree with both.
But he wrote my 81-year-old mother into it.
He did.
And had her say some scurrilous things.
It was...
I can't believe she agreed to it.
The first thing I texted you after watching it was, I felt like I was watching a David Lynch film. It was so...
We'll have to get him to post the link on the Discord server so that people can see it, because it is funny. It's full of really weird things, but it is funny.
It is.
Including him streaking past in his underwear again, as usual.
There's an interesting interlude of him cutting grass that's...
The bit where he opens the magazine as well. Remember that? He's like, it's so white!
So... Thank you, Rob. Good job on that. It certainly was a lot of effort. You even had lines for your mom, which she delivered very well. She should get an award for that performance.
She did. She did. My mother claimed to have been an extra in Game of Thrones, which is not true. To reassure the crowd. And in particular, she was not whore number 3 in one scene, as she claimed to have been.
Oh, goodness. I do believe we can discount that rumor.
So with that little tease, I think that's a good way to get people to join the Discord server to see that video. We'll get Rob to post the video to the Discord server and let everyone pick over the bones of the fevered mind of my brother.
I think it'll bring much joy and mirth to all, and also some confused looks. Probably a few confused looks.
I was confused at the 3-minute mark or something. I was like, has he forgotten that he's making a video for us? Because he just starts mowing. I know. It goes on and on.
Oh goodness. Anyway. We
should have him on one day.
Yes, we should.
Because he's a character, my brother.
He is indeed.
I've told you before he's getting married. Yeah,
right.
I'm making plans to go to the wedding.
All right.
In October.
That's great. Is that a good time to visit?
Yeah, it's getting a bit chilly over there. Then October's a good time to live in North Carolina.
It is. Yes.
Because summer hangs around. In fact, the intolerable part of summer is over, and you get the sort of late summer where it's still kind of nice.
Right. Yeah. Sometimes you have to wait till November to really feel the fall.
Yeah. Yeah. October can be chilly in Normandy, but hey, wedding,
right?
Family, it'll be fun.
Absolutely. Sure, it will.
All right, let's get down to business. How do we leave Jon Snow? Well, last we saw of Jon, which was only 2 chapters ago, this is as quick a turnaround as you can have.
Pretty much, yeah.
There's no examples of back-to-back chapters that I can think of. He was scaling the side of a mountain in the Skirling Pass to dispatch a pair of wildling scouts. He discovered Ygritte, a surprise 3rd member of the wildling party, and took her captive. She claimed kinship with him through an old wildling story. When Qhorin Halfhand arrived, he told Jon to do what needed to be done with her, and left him to do the deed. Try as he might, Jon couldn't execute her. Instead, he sent her on her way. Mackelly, why don't we give the summary of this one?
All right. Well, Jon and the Night's Watch Rangers continue their way through the Skirling Pass. Being black brothers, they halt during the brightest part of the day, as shadows hide them in their attire better than rays of sunshine do. During the break, Jon questions why Qhorin Halfhand hasn't asked him how it went with the wildling woman Ygritte.
The conversation first detours towards Mance Rayder and his time as a ranger of the Night's Watch. Qhorin not only knew him, but was friends with him. Qhorin says that Mance was the best ranger they had, but he had a penchant for the wildling life. Not surprisingly, because he was born a wildling, but raised by the Night's Watch when his parents were killed. So him deserting was just going home for Mance.
Qhorin goes on to say that the wildlings are as smart and brave as the brothers of the Night's Watch. They just lack discipline, and each one thinks himself or herself as an individual first. Qhorin then rightly guesses that Jon let Ygritte go. He explains that he didn't care much what Jon did with her. He just wanted to see what Jon would do, so he'd know Jon better, and now he does.
Qhorin sends Jon off to sleep. Ghost chooses to hunt rather than join Jon. Jon dreams of direwolves, sensing 5 where there had been 6, all scattered apart from one another. In the dream, he's called by name from behind. He turns, expecting to see his brother. Instead, he finds a weirwood tree. It's small, but growing as he watches. The face on the tree is Bran's. Only it has 3 eyes. Jon smells death and darkness in among the scents of the wood, boy, wolf, and earth. The tree reaches out and touches Jon, telling him it will help him to open his eyes to see.
As soon as the branch touches him, Jon is inside Ghost, looking out over an expansive valley below a glacier reaching thousands of feet in the air. The valley is full of wildlings, more than he knew ever existed. Their dwellings and cook fires are haphazardly strewn about. Some charge a shield wall in mock battle, not the cook fires or dwellings. I mean, some of the wildlings charge a cook fire.
That makes sense.
And charge a shield wall in mock battle. He even sees a woolly mammoth ridden by a giant. As Jon/Ghost takes in the scene, an eagle dives at him, digging his talons into skin and fur.
Jon wakes, still feeling the talons in his own skin. He shouts for Ghost, but is quickly subdued by his brothers. Qhorin has him retell the dream, which Jon does, feeling foolish, only none of the men are laughing. Ebben calls Jon a skin changer, and Qhorin says, why not? The dead are walking and the trees have eyes again.
Afterward, they press on in the growing darkness. Squire Dalbridge spots an eagle sitting on a rock far above them. This is cause for pause, but Qhorin pushes them onward. Jon starts to follow when he spots Ghost lying not far away, his back bloody and torn. The men clean him up. Qhorin announces it's time to retreat. The eagle has spotted them. So they make their way back to where Ygritte and the men watch the pass just before dawn.
Qhorin thinks the right man can hold off 100 from this vantage point. Squire Dalbridge takes the hint and volunteers to stay behind to create a distance between his brothers and the wildlings. Later, as dawn breaks, Jon and Ebben notice a speck in the sky, followed by a blast of a hunting horn.
Uh-oh.
So, you want to start the conversation here with whether or not there's much point in Squire Dalbridge's sacrifice here.
Well,
which is practically pedantry.
It's just, it's a loss of a good man and ranger to an organization who is in dire need of good men and rangers.
True.
And I'm just not sure what the benefit they got out of all of it was. I mean...
Right. And particularly to turn back when they did. This is the part about it that sort of puzzles me, is they've gone to all this trouble to climb all this way, and they haven't laid eyes on the wildlings.
Right.
They laid eyes on an eagle who they think might be spying on them, but it might just be a bird. And now they've turned and run, leaving one of their party behind. It seems absolutely bizarre. The one thing is, they did get intel from Jon, but that might have just been a dream.
Right. I think maybe Qhorin decided when he saw the bird paired with Ghost being torn and bloody on the ground below the bird, that he decided, okay, Jon's dream was legit. I've seen what I need to see. We can go. But
I see.
They didn't really... So they discovered that there's a lot of wildlings in one place, and they've got at least one giant. What does that do? How does that help the Night's Watch that they couldn't have already assumed, minus the giant thing?
Well, here's what they could do. With this intelligence, this hard-fought and earned intelligence that cost the life of Squire Dalbridge, they could now go back to the wall...
Where they started.
And defend it.
Right.
Now that they've fingered the danger, aha! It's a lot of wildlings and perhaps a woolly mammoth. Although that might have just been Jon and the wine.
Yeah, I mean, I know we continually, every Jon chapter, basically since this book started, have poked holes in the fruitlessness of this great ranging. But
yeah. Well, now I think the fruitlessness of this. I mean, this whole trip, it feels like did you really think you were going to be able to walk into the wildling camp unnoticed and walk back out again? Right. No, someone's going to see you.
Yeah, especially wearing your black Night's Watch garb. They didn't even try to blend in.
As you were telling me that, I was thinking, even in The Empire Strikes Back, the stormtroopers had like white cloaks to help them hide in the snow. And they were already dressed in white. They didn't even need them.
Right. It was just a additional garb to wear to look nice in the snow.
So yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, I'm with you. It all seems just a little bit strange, but it is interesting that how seriously Qhorin took the dream. I mean, clearly he thought Jon was reporting back legitimate information. I do wonder, I mean, of course, we only got sort of like snippets of their conversation. I do wonder if Jon had actually recce'd the place to the point where it actually provided useful information. I mean, if the description we got was like, a lot of people, haphazard cook fires, a giant on a mammoth, and some people, perhaps kids, playing and attacking a shield wall. It's
right.
Like... You'd really feel like you'd want a lot more, having like almost killed the direwolf to get this. And by the way, how big is this eagle? I imagine an eagle. I mean, eagles are big birds, and they pick up like big trout and things. But a trout is one thing. A direwolf is like a pony.
It is like a pony.
I've never seen an eagle pick up a pony.
I worry sometimes that a hawk is going to pick up a penny out of my front yard.
Yeah, that could happen. Your direwolf is not so big.
No, not so much. Anyway.
All right, so
let's back up a bit now.
But actually, I'm going to steal your glory here, but you made an interesting point here that it's... I thought, as I read the book, and read it, as you know, multiple times, because
you gotta tell our friends what you told me yesterday.
So we're recording later in the week than we normally do, because Mackelly texted me the other day and said, "Hey, are we ready to record?" And I was like, "Oh, I haven't even read it yet. I'm behind." And so I said, "Don't worry, we'll get there. I'll read it tonight, and then I'll do the notes and everything." And so that night, as promised, I read it. And as I read it, I realised that I was wrong in saying I hadn't read it. I had actually read it 2 days earlier and already forgotten that I'd read it. It was, but not that much, because I sensed it. As I was reading it, I was like, this is all... I remember this chapter way better than I remember all the other chapters.
Oh, that's good stuff. That's classic right there.
Yeah, sorry. So, but yeah, you made the point that the if you don't read things carefully, I've noticed this. When I read things fast, I can get the wrong impression of what's going on. And thinking back on this chapter, which I've read at least twice now, I easily could have got the impression that Qhorin interviewed Jon to find out what he did with Ygritte, which to a certain extent is true. But Jon brought her up first. It was not Qhorin.
Right.
Qhorin was fine just marching along. Jon's the one who's like, I'm so guilty, I've got to talk about Ygritte, you know?
Yeah.
And then Qhorin asked.
Right.
Once she was in conversation, he was like...
I think the description even says that he had to get up the nerve to go talk to Qhorin about it. So, yeah, it was premeditated.
I would too. Yeah. The Qhorin Halfhand, if you remember, stopped an axe with his hand and then squirted blood in the eye of his foe.
Right.
And you wussed out of killing a girl? Come on.
But it seems like Qhorin would want to know, because the way he describes it, it seems like the entire exercise was a test. So maybe part of that, like the second half of that test, was finding out whether Jon would tell him what he did or not tell him. Just sweep it under the rug. Maybe that was part of the test.
Yeah,
as well.
There's even more layers, because then there's also the, will Jon tell the truth when he tells me?
Oh, know? Yeah, right. Now, of course, if he knew Jon at all, he'd know he was going to blab, because Jon can't keep anything to himself. So maybe he already knew that about Jon.
Yeah.
But Jon does feel guilt over what he perceives as a violation of the command from Qhorin to kill Ygritte. And, we talked about this a bit the last chapter when Jon met Ygritte, that you can see the effects of being raised in Winterfell with honorable men like Ned Stark and Roderick. And he even says as much in this chapter when Qhorin says, "So you let her go?" And he said, "Why'd you let her go?" And Jon said, "Well, my father never used a headsman. He would swing his own sword, and he felt he owed it to the people to look into their eyes and hear their last words. And when he looked into Ygritte's eyes, he saw no evil. He knows she's an enemy, but no evil. And so he couldn't kill her. And that's the Ned Stark effect right there."
Right, but I will say, like, the one beheading that we know Ned Stark did was Will Garrett.
It was, yeah, depending on whether you watch the TV show or the book
or TV show, right? Yeah. But in either case, they weren't evil. They were just scared out of their wits.
Right.
So, it feels like you are correct. Of course, that's part of the problem with. Part of the reason Jon didn't do it is because he's too honourable to do it. But always looking for evil in the eye of the person you have to kill is not really... You're going to leave a lot of people behind you still alive if you always look for that.
Right, that's true.
They may not be evil, but they may stab you in the back.
As you're sending them away and you turn around to right. Go back to where you came from. So,
wow, you look a lot more evil now. Now you're coming at me.
So Jon says to Qhorin, "So why did you command me to kill her?" And Qhorin says, "I didn't. I said, do what needs to be done, and left you to decide how to interpret that. And right. I wanted to see what you were going to do."
Of course, we all interpreted it the same way. Yes. I mean, Jon certainly heard it as kill her.
Right.
We the readers heard it the same way as well. It is interesting that Qhorin's a more subtle thinker than that.
Than absolutely. For. Yeah, I think even Ygritte interpreted that as kill me.
Right. Or he's just trying to make the best of a bad thing. He's like, oh God, that idiot didn't kill the girl. Okay, let's tell him it was a test and he's passed. And please, others, take me before he becomes the Lord Commander.
So Qhorin says, he wanted to know Jon. And he said, you got to know your men in order to lead them. I know that if I need a mountain climbed, I'll call on Stone Snake. If I need an arrow through the eye of an enemy across a windy battlefield, I'll call Squire Dalbridge. And if I need to learn a man's secrets, I'll call Ebben, which is a much more sinister set of skills.
Yes. I think there's a clear threat there.
Yeah.
Neither of them really mentioned the sort of the lurking danger of Ygritte being free, somewhere before or after them. Presumably she's behind them. I mean, it'd be hard for her to get in front of them through the pass.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of their argument, is she is on foot, has no weapon, so she has to be behind them. Of course, she might not have been stopping during the days like they did. She might have just powered on, but...
Her shock of red hair is perfectly... of course, she doesn't have to hide. She doesn't need to hide. She can keep going.
Right.
In fact, it's good if the eagle spots her.
Yes.
So during this conversation, they discuss Mance. Ygritte said that Mance would have taken Jon in, and Qhorin agrees that that's what would have happened. And this spins into, we learn that Qhorin knew Mance very well. They were friends, in fact.
Yeah, and even just Qhorin agreeing with Ygritte's statement that, Mance would take you in, that whole conversation there kind of reveals a good amount about Qhorin, that he's not just he's not just a mouthpiece for the Night's Watch upper management. He's not towing the company line that wildlings are bad guys and Mance is an awful traitor to the Night's Watch. He paints it as a much more nuanced situation.
Well, but just because he would take him in doesn't mean you don't think he's an awful traitor to the Night's Watch. Mance took a vow which he has betrayed, and a vow that Qhorin Halfhand clearly takes very seriously. So
true.
He's giving him attributes, positive attributes. It doesn't necessarily mean he doesn't think very deeply, lowly of him for doing what he's doing.
That's a good point. He does help explain it. He does give some context into why Mance left the Night's Watch, that he was born a wildling, and he was never very good at taking orders and bending a knee. His knees did not bend easily, I think he said. So, he does...
You get the feeling Qhorin's like that too. You get the feeling Qhorin is like that, so... Although not born a wildling, so that's the big difference. And of course, it's interesting when you've got someone who's born a wildling that you made him a ranger.
Right.
It's like...
You might have been a steward, might have been a better job.
If you really wanted to keep him at the Night's Watch.
Yes. Don't keep tempting him with, this is where you grew up. You remember that tree over there?
It's like putting an adopted child in charge of the records that tell you who the adopted children's real parents are.
Right.
There's going to be a temptation there eventually to...
But, I think Qhorin reveals himself in this conversation to be a true diamond for the Night's Watch. I mean, we know they're, like I said earlier, they're in a tough spot with finding quality brothers, and they've got a real good one here. He's comes off as intelligent and insightful. He's a very gifted leader, it seems. He knows that you have to learn your people, and you have to put the right person in the right place to succeed. And it's fascinating that someone with qualities like this isn't the commander of the Shadow Tower. Hopefully we'll meet Dennis Mallister and see if he's an even better leader than Qhorin, because I think Qhorin has a lot going for him here.
Yeah. But, I mean, leadership often goes to the people who don't truly deserve it.
This coming from a manager.
Promote people out of what they're terrible at.
That's a good point.
And being Lord Commander, or commander of there's a lot of logistics and organizational skills required there, which are not necessarily skills that are in great demand in other aspects of being a member of the Night's Watch.
Yeah.
For instance, if Qhorin Halfhand is terribly disorganized and couldn't keep a a to-do list straight if he tried, he wouldn't actually make a good commander of the Shadow Tower.
Yeah, that's
but
a good
he
point.
is a terrific member of the Night's Watch.
Yeah. Maybe he's skilled at being a leader of rangers, not necessarily a leader of an entire organization.
Yeah.
Or a castle, anyway.
Yeah. But Qhorin makes the point that the wildlings deserve respect. They're just every bit as brave, strong, and smart as the Night's Watch, and only an idiot would hate them. And that is, it's good to hear that, because there does seem to be a sort of degree of hatred towards them from members of the Night's Watch, which is odd and strange because they are just human beings.
Right. He specifically mentions Qhorin Smallwood. You have to be an idiot like Qhorin Smallwood to hate wildlings. But he says they basically just lack discipline. That's the difference between them and the Night's Watch.
Right. Which is why it is very interesting what Mance Rayder could bring to them, because obviously Mance Rayder understands discipline, but also understands the wildlings.
Mm-hmm.
So he could perhaps bring a level of discipline, not complete, not like the Night's Watch, clearly, but perhaps enough to make them a formidable foe.
Yeah, right. But with all the respect that he shows the wildlings, he's still willing to fight, kill, and torture them in the name of his brothers and of the Night's Watch and their directives. So, as much as he has respect for them, he has more allegiance to the Night's Watch and his brothers.
We'll be right back.
Hello, friends. Are you ready to make some unforgettable memories? Well, if so, consider the Marriott Bonvoy program. Discover the perfect destination for your summer getaway and unlock exclusive deals on luxurious accommodations. With our affiliate partnership, you'll enjoy unbeatable savings and a seamless booking experience. Don't let summer slip away. Visit Marriott Bonvoy today and make this vacation season one for the books. Use our Ghosts of Harrenhal affiliate page to check it all out and buy Bonvoy points or give some as a gift. The link to our page is in the show notes.
So as we said, Mance was taken in by the Night's Watch. His parents, who were wildlings, were killed by the Night's Watch. So perhaps that's kind of the germ of his betrayal is right there, that he always harboured a grudge against the Night's Watch.
Yeah, it's a tough spot. He didn't seem to have much choice but to join the Night's Watch, being brought in as a kid. It's not like most of the Night's Watch brothers who, are there either by choice or because they committed a crime, and this is, an alternative to some sort of punishment. He was brought in as a kid, raised in the culture of the Night's Watch, but never, according to Qhorin, never really fit the mold of a brother of the Night's Watch. He was a little too wild, if you will.
Right.
So,
which is slightly funny because most of the people in the Night's Watch are in fact criminals.
Right.
Murders and rapists. But this is the wild one, the child.
Right. But no, you make a good point when you mentioned that, maybe he's secretly harboring, I don't know about secretly harboring ill will, but that he's got a general grudge that maybe he's tried to overcome over the years against the Night's Watch for what happened to him and his family as a child.
Yeah.
And that would generate mixed feelings.
But the other facet of having been in the Night's Watch is that he knows what life is like south of the Wall. Not very well. He doesn't get to experience much of it, but he does know that they have fields that aren't snow, that grow crops.
Yeah, you'd imagine he's seen, some of the things. Probably didn't get too far south, but
right. And farming, probably they don't. It feels like north of the Wall they are more nomadic, perhaps more living off the land sort of thing. But south of the Wall, in the Queen's Gift, they farm.
Right.
He would see herds of cows, which I don't think they really have those north of the Wall. Maybe Crasta has like some pigs and what have you, but. Right. Generally speaking, there's a whole level of agriculture and therefore food and plenty,
right?
Which knowing that he's a wildling, knowing that he's now betrayed them and gone over to the wildlings, he's probably saying about the land of milk and honey just the other side of that 700-foot wall.
Exactly, yes. I would love to see... They should throw this into the Game of Thrones spin-offs. I would love to see an origin story on Mance. See him go from a wildling child, then into the Night's Watch, maybe struggling with his allegiance of which side he really has allegiance toward, and then, deserting and becoming the king beyond the wall. That'd be a really cool story, actually, to follow.
Yeah. So Qhorin says a couple of very, very interesting things about Mance. He says when he left the Shadow Tower, he was only going home.
Right.
And he also says that he was the best of us, which is high praise from Qhorin. You don't feel like Qhorin's much of a gusher.
Right.
But
and he's kind of, Qhorin, like I was saying earlier, he's kind of awesome. So, like to say that he was the best of us, meaning Mance was the best of us, maybe he's just being modest. I don't know. But I thought, wow, I think Qhorin seems pretty amazing. And he says Mance was a better ranger than him.
Yeah, so the one other facet of that before we move on from Mance is that he obviously was likable. I mean, it's one thing to be a good ranger, but to be well liked, that's not necessarily a skill, it's just a characteristic.
Right.
And that could stand him in good stead while he's trying to make a case to the wildlings for why they should band together and do what he says, sort of thing. If he is personable and, charismatic, that could make a difference here.
Yeah, absolutely. Qhorin mentions that that Mance was a singer, in fact, that's how Qhorin knew the Bael the Bard story, was because Mance used to sing it when he would get back to the Shadow Tower after arranging. So, yeah, he must have been a pretty likable character.
Which, of course, is an interesting song for Mance to sing, because it's a song of a wildling getting south of the wall,
right?
Yeah, injecting themselves into a royal house, having his way with the daughter of the royal house, and getting away with it, like fleeing back north of the wall.
Right.
They should have listened more carefully to what he was singing.
They might have seen it coming, had they?
So Jon goes to sleep, minus Ghost, because Ghost runs off, and he dreams of the direwolves, 5 of them, where there should be 6.
And I wonder right there with that, if it's any insight into Bran and Rickon's whereabouts. He says there's 5 when there should have been 6, and they were scattered all apart from each other. But we were under the impression that Bran and Rickon
2 of them
were
be together.
So
good point.
Possibly could they have split up, and maybe that's why Theon had trouble tracking them. He never considered the idea that the boys had gone in different directions.
Yeah, it seems strange to me that they would have gone in different directions.
It does.
Therefore, I cast doubt on the reliability of Jon's dream recollections. I'm just saying.
Maybe he should have said most of them were scattered apart from each other.
Yeah. He seems to be having some kind of, warging, skin-changing event even before he meets Bran in his dream, because he is looking for his brother's lean grey shape, is one of the things he says.
Which is not how you would describe either of his human brothers.
No.
Lean green shape.
Any of the 3 of his human brothers,
Right. Yeah.
Yes. So yeah, he feels like he's taking on Ghost persona in the same way that Bran does when he dreams of summer.
Yeah.
But maybe Bran has projected this dream to Jon,
right,
for Jon's benefit.
I was thinking that same thing, that possibly either he's already developed this warging ability, or because there's obviously a heavy Bran intervention here, that maybe Bran is creating this situation where he's in Ghost in this dream here. And one thing about this dream ghost, is that it mentions that his cry echoed through the forest, but Ghost has never made a sound, even when snarling. So maybe he can only do that when Jon is warging him. Maybe he can make sounds when Jon is in his body.
I wonder if I wonder if that annoys Ghost. I wonder if he like, hey, I like to be the strong silent type. You get in me, and then it's all, oh.
Right.
You think that's what a wolf should do, but I don't like it that way.
But he hears his name called from behind him, that Jon, who's being Ghost at this moment.
But did he hear Jon or did he hear Ghost? Because he doesn't say, does he? He just says he hears his name.
I believe it actually says Jon.
Jon, okay.
But I'd have to look to be positive, but I'm pretty sure he does say Jon. But so Jon looks around. He's looking for that lean gray shape that Simon mentioned, and of course at this point we don't know which brother it is. He just says my brother. So theoretically, at this point, it could have been any of his brothers. But he turns around and he sees a weirwood, and being that Bran dreams of weirwoods too, you automatically lean toward Bran even before you get the third eye thing. So I
can confirm that the name Jon was said, although it wasn't in quotes. It was in sort of like italics, like sort of like in the head. He heard the word,
right?
Jon. But then that's strange to me. Then that having heard the name Jon, he would turn round looking for a wolf. Feels like if you heard the name Jon, you would turn around looking for the person.
Right. Yes, that's a good point. Maybe he's thinking with a direwolf's brain at that point, like Bran does.
Yeah.
But he turns around and he sees a weirwood. It starts as a sapling and grows and thickens and reaches for the sky. And, I have in the notes here that at this point it could still be either brother because he's not seen the three eyes yet. Could have been Robb's power. The weirwood growing could be a metaphor for Robb's power increasing, or it could be Bran shaking off his childhood and becoming a man grown. Or, likely, Bran learning how to be that winged wolf that Jojen wanted him to be by learning to open his third eye. So,
yeah. Yeah, and then so he encourages Jon to open his third eye as well.
Right.
So this is sort of like a passing the baton of this, and we're not quite sure what the third eye gives you. Obviously, it gives you some kind of insights and power that you wouldn't otherwise have.
Right.
The ability to see things from afar, perhaps, but presumably it would be beneficial. But it's without seeing any evidence of its power, it's difficult to know exactly what it would do for them.
Very true.
For instance, by comparison, Melisandre can give birth to a shadow demon which can go out and murder people. Clear, 1-to-1. Take this power, use it.
Yes, the benefits are very obvious and very immediate.
But maybe the third eye you can see around corners, I don't know.
Maybe it makes him a really good poker player. He can see to the other side of the cards.
maybe you can really look someone in the eye while reading.
Multitasking. But so Jon smells, because he's a wolf. He smells a lot of smells mixed in with this weirwood Bran. He smells earth and stone and boy and tree and death. Which is a rather ominous thing to smell around Bran.
Yeah.
Especially as we know he's in a rather dangerous position being on the lam and being hunted. So that's not good.
And so then the Bran tree tells Jon that he can see those who can't see you in the dark. Is that right? Did I get that right? That Jon could see those who can't see him in the dark, but in order to do so, he has to open his eyes first.
Right. Yeah.
Which is interesting.
Yeah. I think Bran is saying it like, oh, don't worry about me being in the darkness. I don't mind it. I can see people, but they can't see me. But in order to do that, you have to open your third eye like this, and he whacks him in the head with the tree branch.
I see.
And much like Bran developing his third eye after the crow pecked his forehead in a dream, Jon seems to get at least according to Bran, get a third eye when Bran smacks him in the head with a tree branch. So, did he just give Jon the gift of green sight? Is it temporary? Is it just because he's in this dream with Bran? Is this something that's going to happen going forward?
Right. Yeah, I mean, it feels like it is something that Bran doesn't have all the time. I mean, obviously, literally, he doesn't have a third eye.
Right.
And presumably, if it is some kind of ability to see things that you can't see with two eyes, he doesn't have it every minute of every day. It's not like he's got X-ray vision. So
Good
maybe
point.
it is only something that you pick up in your dreams. But maybe you're right. Jon has it from this point forward, perhaps.
Maybe. Or maybe he's just Bran showing Jon what he's capable of, giving him a glimpse into his power. So what happens when Bran hits Jon with the weirwood branch is Jon goes from the dream with the weirwood, that's Bran, back into Ghost's body in what seems to be real life at this point.
We'll be right back.
This episode is sponsored by Audible. To get a free audiobook, or 2 if you're an Amazon Prime member, go to our exclusive URL, audibletrial.com/ghostsharrenhal. You can find the link in our show notes.
Right, yes, like a warging experience rather than a dream.
Yes, exactly.
Which is useful, of course, because obviously you can't trust anything you see in a green dream because it could be the wolf's dream too. But if you're experiencing what the wolf experiences, but there is a kind of a fuzzy line between these two things. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah.
Jon definitely feels this difference, but to us, a lot of it seems kind of pretty airy-fairy.
Right.
But of course it makes a difference here because what Ghost can see is that which they've come to find out, which is the wildling encampment. But unfortunately Ghost himself is spotted.
Right. By an eagle. So, like you mentioned in the summary, he sees a valley filled with wildlings and that there's no plan to the encampment, but the riders are charging a shield wall. And like you said, I mean, didn't get a great deal of detailed information here. They didn't, not like they got a head count or anything. We've got this much infantry and this many horse. There's some people down there, and pretty sure I saw what looked like either a haystack on the move or possibly a mammoth.
But the other thing is, of course, now you know that they've been practicing against the shield wall. You could just not have a shield wall and instead just have a 700-foot wall.
That might work better. Let them charge against that for a while. Exactly. See how that works.
We should have had us practice this. It's just doing nothing.
So, but then I found this quote here to be curious because there's a quote that says, "This is no army, no more than it's a town. This is a whole people come together," which by itself makes sense. That is fine. But it's done in the italicized voice of Bran, which is kind of odd that a little boy would say something like that. When I first read it, I thought it was Jon thinking, this isn't just a town. This isn't just an army. This is the whole of the populace.
But are you misunderstanding the italics? Because this has now become a warg event rather than a dream, the italics are now Jon within Ghost. The italics during the dream were indeed Bran talking to Jon, but now Jon is inside Ghost. It's maybe Jon's voice. I'm with you. It feels strange that those would be words attributed to Bran.
Right. And I agree with you. I think the first couple times I read it, I thought that too. But the audiobook, they read it with the Bran's voice, with the odd voice that's done for weirwood Bran. So that's why I was like,
well, yeah, it's definitely possible because you're absolutely right. That is the italics that are used for Bran.
So I just thought it was odd because it's an odd thing for a little boy to say.
Yeah. So Mance is obviously getting some fighting discipline going. The camp is random and a bit of a mess, but Mance isn't a miracle worker.
Right.
But you've got to imagine there's very little danger of attack. I mean, like, some of the best rangers in the Night's Watch have come until they saw the first eagle, and then they've hightailed it out of there. So, the camp was sufficiently defended. They just needed that eagle up on that perch.
One eagle, that'll do it.
My point here is, Mance is king of the kingless. These are people who don't follow leaders. They are following him. He cannot impose Night's Watch type discipline. If they were in strict rows, they would be revolting against him.
Yes, you're right.
By being loosey-goosey but trying to encourage them to practice some fighting, he's getting them on his side.
Yes, he's being flexible. He's working with what he's got here, much like Stannis, in fact. It reminds me a lot of Stannis Baratheon, the way he's adapting to his environment so well.
Minus the gritted teeth.
Yes.
I think Mance is fine with it.
Since Ghost didn't hear any teeth grinding, I think Mance is probably not doing that. So then Ghost / Jon sees what he thought was a mound of earth move, and it turns out to be a mammoth with what he thinks must be a giant, because he says both the mammoth and the thing riding the mammoth are way too big to have been human. So,
you know what? I question all this, right? How good is Ghost's depth perception? Probably pretty good, because he's a hunter, right? They have good eyes for this kind of thing.
Yeah.
But the depth perception would be for, like, how far away is that thing I'm trying to kill? It's kind of short range.
Yes,
it's only he's looking down from a sort of like a hill into a valley filled with thousands of people. I'm just saying, this could have been a shaggy pony with a child on it quite a lot closer than he realized.
Yes. You're right. As you were talking, I was thinking dogs are known to have terrible eyesight, right? So I wonder if...
Oh, really?
I think so. I think dogs don't have... They use their sense of smell and hearing, right? Primarily. Right, yeah. So I wonder. I don't know about wolves' sense of sight, but yeah, you bring up a good point.
Yeah. Just saying.
But so seeing this giant, if we take it for granted that it's a giant like he thinks it is, it really just shows the vastness of the land north of the wall, because Ebben says later that he's been in the Night's Watch since he was a boy, and he's ranged as far as any ranger, and he's never seen a giant, only bones and odd tales of giants. And Osha mentioned in I think it was Bran 6 of a Game of Thrones, maybe, that her description of the giants seemed like they were fairly prevalent north of the wall. She told Bran that her brother killed a 10-foot giant. And
yes,
so at that time when we got that information, we figured rangers have to see them. I mean, they must be somewhat prevalent, but Ebben's story is otherwise.
Yeah, I wonder if some of this, and I've been thinking about this sort of like as this has been going on, the fear of winter is spreading from the north southwards, right?
Sure.
I wonder if the more magical creatures, the mammoths and the giants, live further north, and they've been driven south by the rising horror
of
this winter.
I like that.
And
yes,
that's actually why Mance's army is so large. It's not because it's like a thin band of 20 miles, 10 miles north of the wall where we've gathered all the wildlings. It's everyone who lives further north than that is heading south, and they've all sort of agglomerated together.
That is very solid possibility right there. I like that.
So at that point, the shadow plummets from the sky. It's got blue-green pinions spread wide, and the eagle digs its talons into Ghost. So we definitely think this eagle is tied to the wildlings, because it sort of like basically tracks their movement from this point onwards.
Right.
And as I say, it must be a heck of an eagle. I mean, if I were that eagle, I would put like a couple of talons in there, and I would hightail it out of there as quick as I could, because that direwolf is going to be mad. But it really hurt Ghost. I mean, Ghost basically lay still from that point onwards until Jon found him the next day.
Right. Yeah, later it had been like 4 or 5 hours when they started moving again because they rested for 4 or 5 hours.
Right. He wasn't sleeping overnight. That's right. They were sleeping until it went dark.
Yeah, but still, they had to sleep 4 or 5 hours and then get up and travel to Ghost. So, he must have been pretty hurt to not be able to move, or at least not want to move. Maybe he was laying still because he was afraid that eagle was going to attack him again. So he was playing dead.
So, presumably, eagles don't routinely attack direwolves.
You wouldn't think.
You'd think that would be a strange thing to do. So, why did this eagle attack this direwolf? And my guess here is that it's sort of warg recognizing warg. That this is the eagle is being warged by a wildling, and he's on patrol. And normally you wouldn't say, hey, go risk all of your life by attacking that direwolf. But when you recognize that the direwolf is actually a spy for the opposition, you go and attack him.
Right. It seems like there's one of two options here. The wildlings have their own wargs, which is certainly possible, like you said. Or this is some sort of eagle pet who's been following them since Jon was with Ghost. And that's how the eagle knew that Ghost was connected to the Rangers.
Right.
Because Jon mentions last chapter seeing eagles. He mentions having seen eagles. Maybe it's the same eagle. Maybe that same eagle has been following them for a while now.
Yeah. But then two counterpoints to that. One is, if you know that Ghost is an enemy, and it's heading towards a point where it can overlook the camp, and you don't want it to see the camp, attack it before it sees it.
Right. Yeah.
Secondly, if it's just a direwolf, it couldn't report back what it sees. What's it going to do? Scratch a diagram in the sand with its claw?
It could do like a Lassie thing,
Yeah.
Have Jon come follow him. What is it, Ghost?
But Jon's headed that way anyway.
What is it, Ghost? Has Ebben fallen in a well?
It looks like a child on a pony. What are you trying to do, Ghost? No, way bigger.
But so when Jon wakes, it's a very different experience for Jon telling of his wolf dream than it was for Bran in Winterfell. And
in what way?
In the way that when Bran was trying to tell Maester Luwin of his wolf dreams and weirwood dreams, Maester Luwin, being a man of science, was being very rational about it and saying it's just a dream. These things don't happen. Magic doesn't happen. I tried. It doesn't work. But when Jon mentions that he had a dream and goes into a very vague detail about it, Qhorin is like, tell me every single detail of this dream, and takes it a lot more seriously than the reception that Bran got.
It's funny, I found myself both siding with Maester Luwin and siding with Qhorin during that. I was like, yeah, man of science. Kid comes and tells you they've had a bad dream. You say, it's a dream, kid. Get over it.
Right.
But also, I'm like, well, come on, we're from the north. We got to believe in these things, So yes, you raise a good point. It was a different reaction.
Although I think it's the mention of the lake underneath the glacier that tips Qhorin off. That, whoa, those are two things that really exist, and we have not seen either of those things yet.
We haven't got there yet, yeah.
And Craster told them that Mance's people were gathering at a lake where the source of the milk water, which is a lake underneath a glacier. So, that he did have reasons to believe that Jon might be onto something. He wasn't just totally like, ooh, tell me about your dream.
Yeah. God, you wouldn't believe how bored I am. Tell me about your dream.
I've been sitting around by myself for hours while you people slept.
So the men progress onwards. They see the eagle, which gives them pause. Qhorin says to keep going because now it's twilight. Jon says it could be just an eagle. Obviously, that is a possibility that need not be immediately discounted. Eagles live there.
Yeah, and so they find Ghost, and he's torn up like we mentioned, and they fix him up, and now it's dark. It was twilight when they saw the eagle, But by the time they finish fixing Ghost up, it's dark. And Qhorin does a complete 180 here. When they saw the eagle,
Literally.
he said, let's keep going. After he saw Ghost in the shape that Ghost was in, he said, let's get the heck out of here. And so it seems like seeing Ghost was the deciding factor to turn back.
Yeah.
Until that moment, he could rationalize, like Jon, Jon thought it could be any eagle. That's just an eagle. And he could rationalize that, but seeing the eagle over a bloody ghost gave him enough evidence to believe that Jon's dream...
Because if Jon gave all the details, then he would have mentioned the fact that the eagle attacked the wolf. And if he sees a wolf harmed by an eagle, that really confirms everything you need to know.
Yeah, and
it's a good point, actually. And it does undermine my pedantry about they've come this far, because now they feel like we saw what we came to see.
Yeah, if you can believe that, if you can accept that this eagle attacked Ghost and Jon dreamed it, then it's not too much more of a step to believe that the things that Jon saw while he was Ghost were also legitimate.
Yeah. So, in order to sort of protect them as they run for their lives, although I don't know how quickly the eagle can report back what he's seen. Maybe he has to scratch in the sand as well. I don't know. It looks like, a scarecrow? What is it? Oh, crow! Yes, it's a Night's Watch guy. 5 of them? So Squire Dalbridge accepts the Qhorin's hint to go back to the perch where they found Ygritte, and from there hold off the presumably thousands of wildlings who are going to go chasing these 5 Night's Watch members, so that they don't report back that there are thousands of them. I mean, right. what else is there? You didn't get anything from this?
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, so much for the old all for one for all, no man left behind thing. It's like, we need someone to sacrifice their life here, and you're the best shot we've got, so kind of need you to literally fall on your arrow here.
If I was Squire Dalbridge, I'd be like, well, that'll come in very handy back at the wall when they're... You'll want me then.
Yes, that's right.
This Jon fella, what's he doing?
The fact that there was no hesitation or objection by Squire Dalbridge just shows his dedication to his brothers here.
Or his plan to change sides.
Could be that too. Maybe he overheard Qhorin when he told him.
Mance would take me in, you say?
Yeah. Anyway.
And it's interesting. You make the point of that dedication, and it does feel like Qhorin's men seem to be more dedicated than the Castle Black people. The Castle Black people seem to be more whiny complainers, whereas the Shadow Tower seems to be a little bit more hard-edged. True.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about it, the comparison with Castle Black, because we've certainly seen enough whiny Castle Black members like Chet. But
I will say that the whining doesn't preclude selflessness when the time comes,
True, that's true. Yeah, it's a good point.
Some people just need to vent.
And we're also dealing with hand-picked rangers here. Qhorin picked this group of rangers. Clearly he must trust them and think that they are willing to sacrifice their lives for him if need be.
Maybe he should have brought one who he really didn't like for this very job. I'm not much of a shot. It's okay. Just
do your best.
All right. Do you have some background information?
Well, I do. Wasn't an easy chapter to get much background on. Not a whole lot happened.
There was snow, and there were mammoths. Oh, and there were giants.
There were giants. Giants,
good.
Weren't there? So, since Jon got a glimpse of what appeared to be a giant in this chapter, and since last Jon episode we talked about some of the Brandon Starks throughout the Stark line because of Ygritte's story of Bale the Bard, I thought we'd continue the theme and mention a son of one of those Brandons that also ties into giants. How about me getting creative there? So,
thank goodness.
You probably don't remember, but the earliest Lord Brandon Stark that I mentioned last Jon chapter was named Brandon the Boastful, and he died in 49 AC. Now, we ruled him out as Bran the Daughterless from Ygritte's story because he had 2 sons, which technically does make him Bran the Daughterless.
Not in the necessary sense.
Yes. So anyway, his oldest son, Walton Stark, succeeded him as Lord of Winterfell. But now, I'm going to take you several hundred miles south here. Down in King's Landing, King Jaehaerys the First Targaryen had just ascended to the Iron Throne after the death of Maegor the ever-so-misunderstood.
Thank you.
Now, young King Jaehaerys had recently made peace with the Faith of the Seven after years of fighting between their militant wing, called the Faith Militant, and his misunderstood uncle Maegor. Part of the agreement was that several hundred members of the Faith Militant would take the Black. 4 of Maegor's Kingsguard also took the Black to avoid execution. Now fast forward a little bit. In 50 AC, 2 of Maegor's former Kingsguard, Sir Oliver Bracken and Sir Raymond Mallory, led a mutiny in the Night's Watch, backed by many of the recently arrived Faith Militant. Lord Walton Stark rode to the aid of the Black Brothers. Lord Walton beheaded Sir Oliver with his sword Ice, but Sir Raymond fled north of the Wall, and of course Walton pursued Raymond and his men into the haunted forest, but unfortunately, he and his party were attacked by giants. It's said that Walton slew 2 of the giants in the fight, but was eventually torn limb from limb. Sir Raymond might have been temporarily spared by the giants' intervention, but his luck wouldn't last much longer, because within 6 months, his head was delivered to Eastwatch by the Sea by a wildling chieftain who claims his people had eaten the rest of Raymond. Walton's bones were laid to rest in the crypts of Winterfell. When King Jaehaerys later visited Winterfell, Walton's brother, now Lord Alaric Starr, took the king to visit Walton's tomb, and he blamed the king for his brother's death. There's 2 lines of dialogue here. Do you want to take King Jaehaerys and I'll take Alaric?
Please, I've always wanted to be King Jaehaerys.
All right. So Alaric
I'm going to ad-lib something about my uncle.
Alaric said, Walton lies down here in darkness, in no small part thanks to you. The Stars and Swords, which is a nickname for the Faith Militant, the leavings of your 7 gods, are what to us? And yet you sent them to the wall in their hundreds and their thousands, so many that the Night's Watch was hard-pressed to feed them. And when the worst of them rose up, the oath-breakers you sent us, it cost my brother his life to put them down.
A grievous price, but that was never our intent. You have my regrets, my lord, and my gratitude.
I would sooner have my brother. And scene.
You know I'm a Targaryen, right? Don't be pushing my buttons.
So there you go.
Well, that's very good, thank you.
Certainly.
I appreciate the background. Alright, comparison with the television show, none of this really happens, and the bits that do happen would kind of be spoilers if I did talk about them, because they come sort of later in the show.
Okay.
Mostly, Jon and Ygritte are still sort of like rowing with each other at this point in the show.
That's right.
I think all this was filmed in Iceland, and it's fascinating scenery. You know, they're all sort of like walking over lava flows that are covered in snow. But it actually was raining, I noticed. So just a little bit of a thaw in the north for this scene. It was raining, not snow.
Yeah. That's right. You reminded me yesterday that the way Jon got separated from the other brothers of the Night's Watch is he went chasing after Ygritte when she ran off when he was supposed to execute her and couldn't. And
he did recapture her, but I can't tell you what goes on next in their story until it sort of like realigns with the TV show, because it will be spoilery.
All right.
So pedantry, we've kind of undermined my pedantry. I mean, I just felt like the whole they're going to sneak in and sneak out never felt like it was going to happen. So why are they turning back now? Because they saw through Ghost Eyes what they came to see, and now they can go back and report back. I got nothing.
Yeah, although the original idea of sneaking in and sneaking out does seem a bit far-fetched. Because if they were going to have one group of watchers in the pass, you'd think they would probably have a second.
Although,
somewhere.
honestly, what's the point? You're not doing anything other than being enormous. I mean, that's the only piece of information is how vast they are.
Right.
Too many to count. Oh, great, thanks. So we still don't know. Ghost only has 4 claws on each. There were more than 8. News and notes, you've got something.
I do. I was in the news recently that Brian Cox, who's currently most notable for his role in the HBO show Succession, which I believe you watch, correct?
I do, although I haven't seen the most recent series. But I highly recommend the show Succession. It's very, very good. There's I saw some background to it, and not Macaulay Culkin, younger brother.
Qhorin Culkin.
Qhorin Culkin is in it, and he is Brian Cox's son. And basically, the show is called Succession. They're a wealthy family, and it's sort of like the children are trying to position themselves to succeed the father.
Yeah,
and Qhorin Culkin talks about the fact that many of his scenes are him just being in abject terror of his father. And he said, when Brian Cox is shouting in your face, he said, I'm not acting. I am genuinely afraid, because he's a holy terror. He really
Easiest acting job I've ever had.
Exactly.
Well, Brian Cox admitted in a new autobiography that he turned down the role of our beloved Robert Baratheon in the Game of Thrones TV show. His reasoning is that although the show went on to become a huge success before arguably self-destructing, the
I added the word arguably into those notes. Did you notice? You just went for the self-destruct.
Right. The initial compensation numbers weren't anything to write back to Storm's End about. You see what I did there?
I did.
Okay. He sleeps well at night on a bed of cash because King Robert Baratheon, the first of his name, died in season 1. So he wouldn't have seen the pay boosts that the actors that were around for the long haul received. And the autobiography is called Putting the Rabbit in the Hat, if you have any interest in such a thing.
So I wonder, so Mark Addy played King Robert Baratheon, and I really like Mark Addy. I'm a big fan of his. But I wonder if he hung around the set for the next 7 series begging for extra scenes now that the money had gotten good.
We need a flashback right here.
Exactly. Or every time there was a scene with the others, he ran on to try and get touched. But I have to say, it's interesting. I think Mark Addy did a good job of Robert Baratheon, but Brian Cox is a different level of actor, I think, to Mark Addy, and it would have been interesting to see him do that.
That would have.
I think Mark Addy did a good job of it. I'm not criticizing.
Oh no, yeah, he did. He did a great job of it. But yes, it would have been a very different style of Robert Baratheon, I think.
Yeah, and maybe Mark Addy's a better fit, to be honest.
Right, yeah, because
there's definitely a joviality.
Yes, that's exactly what I was going to say.
Baratheon. Yeah.
Yes.
And don't forget that if you become a sustainer on our Buy Me a Coffee site, which is buymeacoffee.com/GhostHarrenhal, then you will be grandfathered into the highest tier of sustainer for the future. So if you are interested, please join us there. We would greatly appreciate it.
Absolutely.
All right, let's conclude. Was it a coincidence that Bran reaches out now? Is he in a position where it's easier for him to do this kind of thing because he's outside of Winterfell? Yeah,
that's a possibility. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. Yeah,
getting back to nature.
Right. I guess you'd think that there's one of 3 possibilities. Complete coincidence that he just managed to pop into Jon's dreams at the exact moment that Jon needed to be able to see through Ghost and see what lies ahead of them. Or maybe something alerted Bran to Jon's danger. Possibly Jojen had a green dream or something that...
or the telepathic connection between the wolves.
Right, something like that. Or it could possibly be that Bran is in some kind of danger and was reaching out to Jon. And... right. Jon didn't pick up the message, I guess, if he was.
Yeah. Woohoo, look at me, I'm Ghost.
Although,
did you smell death? Thanks, you're a pal.
Yeah, the death thing, like
Mom was right about him.
The death thing is a little disturbing, that's what I was saying. Is there peril going on with Bran that maybe caused him to reach out at this exact moment?
Yeah, and then was the eagle guarding the pass against direwolves? Was the eagle also being warged?
Yeah.
Is this something that wildlings can do? Just like, I mean, again, I always think of the Starks as being sort of like a civilized version of the wildlings. So that the abilities that the Starks have, the wildlings have them perhaps more routinely.
Sure.
So it wouldn't surprise me if the kind of ability that we're seeing Bran have now is something that the wildlings, at least some of them, have in their repertoire.
Yeah, and they don't have the maesters around trying to push their science.
Telling them they're wrong.
Yes, So yeah, I could absolutely see that it would be a more free environment to explore things like warging. And also, like Jojen told Bran, people are going to react very poorly when they discover that you're a warg. But maybe north of the wall, that's something that is more appreciated and, more highly regarded than it is south of the wall.
Yeah. So they haven't gained an awful lot from this expedition, as we complained before it started. And
yeah,
I mean, certainly, if there was rumor earlier of Mance doing something in the Frostfangs to sort of like perhaps find something that could destroy the wall or get them through magical. The wall somehow.
Yeah,
but I mean, was it the mammoth?
That's what they needed. They needed the
He's
mammoth
got really
and the
hot
giant.
breath and melts the thing. So yeah, I mean, Craster told them where they were. Craster said they knew all the villages had been depleted of people, so they knew it was a lot of people. They've gained nothing from this.
Right.
They've lost their best archer, and they've got some frostbite.
And they still have a 700-foot wall at their backs now, though, unfortunately.
At their backs, they need it in front of them.
Right.
Or just underneath them, ideally.
But now it seems like a race back to the Fist of the First Men.
Yeah. The one thing, I guess, just trying to think about justifications for all this. If you could say, hey, there were 100,000 people there, for sure, then that is something that Mormont could use to say, you know what, we're going to need a bit of a boost here,
Sure. Yeah.
We got a wall, but we cannot defend it from 100,000 people. They can crawl up at too many points for us to stop them.
Yeah.
Which I don't think is true. I mean, seriously, 100,000 people, you can't build that many ladders.
Right. Yeah. I get you. Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that it's completely useless information. It is good to know the size of the force you're dealing with. But they only know that it's more people than Jon knew that there was north of the wall, which is still a very vague number.
Right.
But maybe the folks going up through the giant stairs and up the following the Milkwater will get more specific numbers.
Right. Actually, maybe Mance told them to be disheveled with their thing, because if they'd just done rows of cook fires, he could have counted how many there were this direction, how many were that direction, multiplied them together. 8 people per cook fire. You'd have a pretty solid guess right there,
As it was, it's just haphazard chaos. Exactly. They have no idea. Exactly. But yeah, it seems like a race back, but you would think that the Rangers have the advantage since they got a head start and they've got Squire Dalbridge up there plucking off about the first few hundred wildlings to pop their heads.
Does he have that many arrows, really?
It's a good question. I don't know how many arrows he has.
Yeah.
But they are fewer, being there's only 5 of them, so you'd think they would be faster.
Yes, you would. No matter who they send chasing them, you'd think these hardened rangers could move quickly.
Yeah, but it is the wildlings' home turf, so maybe they know shortcuts and stuff.
That is true.
All right. Got anything else?
No.
Me either. Let's wrap this up. Well, as always, you can reach us at ghost.harrenhal@gmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter at @GhostHarrenhal. We are also on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and of course, Discord, which I highly recommend you come join the conversation there as well.
And there's 3 ways that you can help us. First and foremost, go out and leave us a review. There's no better advertising than that. Secondly, buy some merchandise at ghostsofharrenhal.threadless.com, or buy us a cup of Arbor Gold at buymeacoffee.com/ghostharrenhal. Big thank you to those who've already become sustainers.
Absolutely.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.